This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This is Vanessa Marshall, Hera Syndulla from Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Joining us today for a cup of coffee to talk about Rescue on Ryloth, the 12th episode of Star Wars The Bad Batch. First, let's bring in Tom Gross.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be here again to talk about The Bad Batch. Man, I can't believe we're on, what is this, episode 12?
Yeah, I believe
Woo!
so.
Nice.
Episode 12, yep. And we just got 4 more to go. Our other host joining us tonight, he is a returning guest to Coffee with Kenobi. It's been far too long since we've had him on. The one and only Blake Weaver.
Dan, Tom, it's great to be back. I'm happy you kept my coffee warm for me. It's been a while, but it still tastes good. And I'm really excited because, we got probably one of my favorite episodes of the season of Bad Batch so far. We get to dissect tonight. I'm really looking forward to expressing my thoughts, but even more so to hear what you guys thought.
Great. Well, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, besides it's just always fun to chat with you, is that I know that for you, the Bad Batch has been kind of hit and miss. Is that fair to say?
Yes, it has been very hit or miss. It started off very strong for me. Probably toward the mid part of this first season, it has been hit or miss with a lot of these episodes. I don't like using the word filler, but there have been some episodes that people have considered filler that I've struggled a little bit with. But overall, I am enjoying the show very, very much. Where I would rank it among Clone Wars and Rebels, I can't say yet. I mean, the series, season 1 is not even over yet. Mm-hmm. But even though it has been a hit or miss, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I'm loving the characters, and I think tonight's discussion will really bring out the best of what this show has to offer as far as the beautiful characters that Lucasfilm has given us with this show.
I love it. I love it.
Nice.
Well said. Well said. Well, that's a tough one to follow, Tom, but I'm going to throw it back to you. As always, give us an overview of the episode and your letter grade.
All right. Well, so I started writing this reaction it's literally at the conclusion of my first time watching the episode. So it has changed a little, but I did want to give a true initial reaction. And this is at the end of my first viewing. I've seen it twice. So my initial reaction, I gave it a B. I felt like the episode was a little flat, especially considering that it has a title with so much potential. I mean, Rescue on Ryloth. I don't know what I was expecting, but apparently after my first viewing, I was expecting more. And it is the 5th episode from the end, so I thought we would be sort of like a bigger ramp up to maybe hints at a conclusion or whatever. But with that said, I thought there were some really key pieces of dialogue in this and some, I don't know, some other just bits here and there that made it become a B grade. But I will say after my second viewing, my grade would be a little bit better. But let's talk about it, and then I'll tell you how it changes for me as we go.
Oh, so we have kind of a teaser trailer for your final grade. I like it.
Yeah, I guess.
All right, Blake, what about you? Overall letter grade and overall comments on the episode as a whole.
My thoughts are very similar to Tom's. I give this episode a B+. I feel plot-wise, like Tom said, it fell a little flat. This was basically the plot was just a rescue mission, and it carried it out in a very generic way. There's at no time in this episode that I felt the Bad Batch were in any real danger during this mission. It was very straightforward. Not that that's a bad thing. I mean, it was still very fun to watch and beautiful to see, as it always is. But yeah, plot-wise, I wanted a lot more. I feel like all the plot was thrown on us last week, and today we were just picking up from that and doing what we needed to do. But the reason I give it a B+ though is because, again, as I brought out earlier, the character moments in this were just beautiful to me. So that keeps it up there. It's a B+. I can't give it an A. Maybe after hearing what you guys say, it could go up. Maybe it'll go down. Who knows? We'll see. But solid B+ for me.
Interesting. All right, I'm gonna give this one an A-. Purely because I've always liked that it's a little bit different. Purely because I had a lot of fun. This might have been the most fun from start to finish episode. And I like, that's, I mean, we all like to have fun with Star Wars.
Yeah.
I do agree with both of you that at no point did I ever feel like there was legitimate tension or peril, except for with the clones, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
I never was worried about any of the main characters, and I didn't feel like there was a ton of cost involved because, again, this is the second or third time this has happened in the series, but it's called Rescue on Ryloth. So I already know they're going to be rescued before it even starts.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
I was like, okay, well, there's nothing to be worried about. I mean, one of the things I've loved about the Bad Batch is that consistently there's at least one moment of legitimate peril, tension, and suspense, and that wasn't available in this. But I was okay with it because I had so much fun, and Chopper was magnificent.
Oh,
yeah.
So let's talk about this episode overall. I mean, not overall. We're going to break it down more specifically, naturally, as we do every week on Coffee with Kenobi. The opening shot, I thought, Tom, a gorgeous example of how far Lucasfilm has come with animation. To me, this opening sequence looked like a Macquarie painting, just the shuttle flying into the city.
Yeah, that was great. I mean, they've done a great job in this whole season of kind of those gasps of air at a beautiful. I mean, when they came into Raxus, and last week, did they start in Ryloth last week too? I think they did.
I believe so.
So a very similar opening, and you had to look carefully because I think a lot of times from behind these Imperial shuttles look a lot like, and now I don't remember. It's not the Marauder. It is the Marauder.
It is the Marauder. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I noticed in this episode though the body of it, when you look at it from behind, the shuttles from behind, the Marauder is thinner. Up and down, it's thinner, whereas the Imperial shuttles have a thicker body top to bottom. Yeah. But so, I took a close look at that, and you see it's Ryloth, and as you mentioned with the title, that's where we're headed. But yeah, and then opens with Rampart. Yeah,
and interesting. I like that when it first is open, there's a part of you, at least part of me, and I know Blake, you're a big original trilogy guy as well. You think that looks like a shuttle Tydirium or an Imperial shuttle, but it's not. It's hard to know who's on what side. Just for a quick glimpse, which is a nice kind of a snapshot into what one of the themes about this episode is.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Rampart. To me, he is absolutely strutting at this point in his young role of leadership with the Empire. He talks to Cham and taunts him and says the liberator of Ryloth to the traitor of Ryloth. What do you make of Rampart?
Rampart is a very straightforward Imperial. He is as original trilogy Imperial as you can get. Mm-hmm. I don't think we'll be seeing any good side to this character. He's made his loyalties well known, and he's not afraid to use this new Imperial army to spread fear, to do whatever dirty deed he needs to do to continue conquering and growing. And I think he's a fantastic character. Ever since we were first briefly introduced to him earlier on in the season, I knew this character. I just had the feeling, the vibe he gave off, he was going to be a very strong presence. And we definitely felt that in this episode with that opening scene and that opening dialogue.
I'm glad to hear that, because when I first saw him earlier in the season, I thought he's just going to be a face of the Empire. He's going to be a puppet, and he's not going to have any real teeth. But he does have a lot of teeth. He's kind of a jerk, really. He taunts Eleni. I even rewound it like 3 times to hear them pronounce her name.
Yeah,
and I'm having like severe stage fright because, of course, but he says to her, you're the sensible one. Talk some sense into your husband. She says, I have seen how you treat your allies. I would rather be your enemy. I love that. It's a great example of one of the ways that Hera gets her strength. But it's nice to see them united. I'm not sure what much more there is to say about that little interrogation scene, but is there anything you want to add to that?
No, except that Blake, I completely agree with you. I think Rampart is turning into a great character, and it makes me think that the Empire has a leadership academy where one of the classes is being a jerk 101.
Yep.
And mental pain, because his his approach is very, and I don't want to say he's on this level, but he's very Thrawn-like. He's very cerebral in his approach. When he walks into and he says the quote that you said, Dan, from liberator to what was
traitor,
it?
To traitor.
To traitor. I mean, that's very cerebral. That's very mental. That's like playing with who you are. And I don't like the way that feels. And then without even saying Hera's name, he mentions your daughter. And I love like we've talked about the animation so much, and it is worthwhile to talk about, because when he says your daughter, they do, I want to say including the close-up shot on Rampart, when he says that, it shoots to Cham raising his eyebrows and like, how dare you, how dare you? And then they go to Hauser in a like shock, like, what are you going to do to Hera? Like, and we start to see this, and we saw hints of it last episode, where Hauser is showing loyalty to Cham, but being loyal also to his brothers, its clones. And so that continues to grow here.
So speaking of clones and brothers, Hauser shows up. He quickly becoming a very popular clone in the Star Wars fandom, I believe. But I love how he talks, Blake. I like how he talks to Rampart. He tries to speak truth of the assassination. He says, I was there. This story that we're telling isn't right. He even offers to leave and go after Hera himself. To me, Blake, Hauser's a really brave guy, but talk about the conversation the two of them have and how they treat one another.
Yeah, I'm really starting to love this Hauser character. I mean, we've only seen him for 2 episodes now. But like you said, the community is really grasping onto this character and what he represents. And with that conversation, you really do see the conflict I felt within Hauser. He's witnessing all this terrible stuff going on around him. He somewhat knows, the Imperials are scummy people. And you just see a lot of conflict within this character. That's all I can really say about that conversation. Mm-hmm. But you see that he's not trying to play both sides, but still just a conflict throughout this episode till the very end, that he doesn't really maybe know what to do right now. And of course he's in front of this Rampart character who, Tom, I'm happy you said he reminded you of Thrawn, because I was actually thinking the same thing as we begun to talk about him. This clone trooper now in front of this very intimidating Imperial. He could be scared for his life and his brothers there on the planet. So not much I can take from the conversation, but just the contradiction between the two characters was pretty interesting to watch.
It's great, and I like Hauser's he's really walking a nice tightrope, isn't he? Because he was trying to be loyal to his duty, to his to his men, to the cause. But he's also like, well, let's be reasonable. I mean, it stands to reason that when Hauser talked to Jedi, he could have did this. He could have said this and possibly helped to influence future decisions and future things that they did. I want to point this out really quickly. I don't think I did last week. But does Hauser have the coolest hair of all the clones? I think it's super cool.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Something else crazy? Did you know, and I found this out today, that Stephen Stanton, the great Stephen Stanton, is the voice of Admiral Rampart?
Really?
Isn't that amazing?
I did not realize that.
He is such a tour de force, isn't he? He's great.
Indeed.
Speaking of great, we right away we know, we're going to get way more Bad Batch than we did the last episode. Omega's fixing Gonky. I don't remember him ever being called Gonky, but there you have it.
That's his name. That's his name now.
Definitely his name now, but it says they say he's a defective unit or something like that, and she says, aren't we all? Which I love. But then, Tom, both Tech and Hunter, Hera sends out a distress signal.
Yep.
She knows the code, and so Omega gets it, and she wants to help them. But talk about how Tech and Hunter treat Omega and their opinion of what they should do.
Okay, let's see. I'm trying to think. I'm looking at my notes. Is this when they are?
I can refresh your memory if you want.
Is this down on the planet? Like
no, it's on the ship before they decide to go.
Okay, yeah, help me out here.
Well, Tech says, very just matter of fact. Children often overreact to situations. And then Hunter says, we can't put ourselves on the line every time someone is in trouble.
Yeah, so it kind of goes back to, a couple episodes ago when she bailed them out monetarily from Sid.
Mm-hmm.
Hunter had sort of agreed, you're part of the team. We're not going to leave you behind again. Well, this moment has kind of like he's kind of taking that back, and they're kind of treating her like a kid again. And that's what Tech ends up doing when he says, well, she's just a child. Children can overreact to things like this. And, and so it's just, it's possibly an overreaction. So there, Omega, know your place is the message from Tech. And then Hunter backs it up. And I just go back to that moment in Sid's when Hunter gives him, or Wrecker gives him that shoulder and looks over his shoulder at him like, I can't believe you just said that to her. And so I felt like that in this scene. Like, how can you guys be saying this kind of thing to Hera or to Omega when you just met and you just realized that you're selling arms to people to try to liberate a planet, and now the little girl is calling for help? That's not overreaction.
Yeah.
And so I feel like they're underestimating the call here. And by the way, I wanted to say that I wanted to do the call out of the throwback to the original trilogy here with Omega saying, I need your help in a transmission, that reminded me so much of Leia bending down to R2-D2. Cool. And you know that she's bending down to Chopper in a very similar way.
Good call. I hadn't thought about that. Blake, do you feel like it was out of character for Hunter? I mean, Hunter has been fairly consistent, but the fact is, like, we can't put ourselves on line every time somebody's in trouble. Is this out of character, or is this kind of match up with what we know about him?
I think it matches up with him because we have to realize he's been on quite a long journey now since episode 1. Things have molded this character, and he's not acting in a negative way. Actually, I think he's being somewhat reasonable. But actually, I wanted to talk about Omega's response to all this. Dan,
Please.
You had that. I don't want to mess up the line. Do you have that written down? How she responded to them about soldier's duty?
It's a soldier's duty, and she said that's her friends or that's her family. I would do the same for you.
Well, even before that, she
says that. Isn't that what soldiers do?
Yeah, that's what soldiers do.
After Hunter says that, yeah.
That was my very first big character moment that stuck out to me this episode. Because at their core, even though they have changed, well, not changed, but they have grown a little bit, adapted, at their core, these are still soldiers. And I thought that line was pretty powerful, Omega's response, because we see that in everyday heroes, though. I mean, look at your first responders, look at your policemen, the military. Even though they may not want to jump into a certain situation, it is their duty to do so. And having a brother who, my brother Ian, who used to be a volunteer paramedic up in Maryland, it's just in him. It's in the people he worked around that, you just do what you got to do. And they realized that when they heard Omega say that, and it sparked what they originally, that fire that had him to respond to Hera's call for help.
Very interesting. Yeah, very well said. I think at the end of the day, I agree with you. I think this is in character for Hunter. He still is waffling on what he's going to do, but I think ultimately the reason he's doing this, the reason he says that he's not going to stick his neck out on the line every time somebody's in trouble, I think in his gut, he doesn't believe that. What I think is happening, I don't think he's being controlling. I think he's being a parent. I think he's trying to keep Omega safe. I really do, in his own way. And I can't fault him for that. But I do think Tech is a little surprisingly dismissive, but I guess we've kind of come to know that about him. But ultimately they do agree because Omega is very persuasive. And so we found out that Hera is hiding out at Cham's old command post, which is kind of cool. And we go back to Rampart. And he basically, it's he and, let's see. I wrote down Rampart as manipulator. Oh yeah. When he talks to the crowd, Tom, I really like that scene. It's certainly not unheard of in Star Wars to see someone in a position of power, high up, literally and figuratively, address the masses and manipulate them. Talk about the psychology of manipulation that we see here.
Well, I mean, it's a really powerful scene, even though it's only like 10, 15 seconds. And he lies to them, right? I mean, Todd's not going to live. He's shot in the head. He's dead, right? And so he's, what you're hearing is that he's trying to give them hope. And we know that it's a lie.
Is he? But, I thought he was actually okay.
Oh,
I don't think we have confirmation that he's dead. I
don't think we have confirmation on either end of that.
Either way, yeah. I think he's just trying to say that Cham did it.
Okay, well, right. I guess I assumed that he was
you were
dead.
Because he tells Orin Frita, you don't want anything to happen to him.
Right. Well, that's it. Yes. I just assumed when he said to Orin Frita after he was shot, he said, "Thank you for doing your part," which I assumed was dying. But maybe it was just
being a patsy. Thanks for letting yourself get shot, even though you didn't sign up for this.
So anyway, but I mean, he manipulates the information and says that it's Cham that did it, and your hero is who attempted to assassinate your senator, and you don't hear the jeers anymore. But I also did notice the crowd was not nearly as thick as it was in the original. When Cham came up with Hauser and the senator talked. So it was a more scattered crowd who'd been summoned or mustered. And so maybe they just, maybe this crossed my mind in that 15-second bit, did they just muster the loyals and come out and send out this misinformation and now we're starting to see a change in public opinion potentially. But yeah, I think it was as short as it was super intentional to give us this feeling that the Empire is getting a hold.
And super intense too. I like that when Rampart said, one line stuck out to me when he said, the attack has left you shaken. And the way they're all looking at him, they're all looking skeptical and kind of annoyed and waiting to see what in the heck this nightmare is going to say. I feel like the people who are there are almost like morbidly curious and trying to see and hope. There's still like a shred of hope inside them that this is going to turn around. I feel like they're really loyal. I feel like obviously Ryloth is a place the Empire is going to have a hard time with, and they will for a long time. So I don't know. I really like your analysis of that, Tom. And that's kind of the fun of this. Even though it's a quick sequence, we don't really know. But so it's fun to have these kind of conversations. Speaking of fun, I talked about this on our Facebook Live this week, but a probe droid shows up. And that's all I want to say. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. I mean, I love probe droids. Blake, talk about that super cool scene.
Yeah, we have now the Bad Batch. They've shown up. They've answered Hera's call, and there they are scouting out. It looks like the main part of the city there. And lo and behold, an Imperial probe droid sneaks up on them, and it's a probe droid because of that sound effect. I think you may even hear the sound effect before you see it. But that sound effect we all know and love so much from that like the one we saw in Hoth in Empire, and you see there that they're scouting it out, but then Hunter is the one who takes notice of the probe droid, and he's like, guys, I'll be right back, and before you know it, the probe droid's got a knife in its face. And it was a pretty cool sequence just between the throwback sound effects. What this show has been doing a lot, which I've really, like you said, Dan, at the beginning, I'm an original trilogy fan, till the day I die, and just to hear all those old sound effects still being used in a modern way has been really cool to see and hear.
I love it. It's so cool the move with his little Rambo knife and jumping from the top, but the probe droids never really fail in their missions. They always get those pictures and send them over really, really, really quickly. They would make great paparazzi, I think, the probe droids. And then we see Crosshair again, Tom. Finally, we see Crosshair again. And I don't know about you two, but for me, this episode was the first time I thought, I kind of like Crosshair. He's kind of cool. He's really intriguing because he wasn't like just angry, bitter. I think seeing Crosshair fail a couple of times his sort of.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not rooting for him. Obviously, I want him to lose. I want him to turn good, but it makes him a little more fascinating. The fact that he's not just like this T2 or Terminator or whatever have you.
Yeah.
So Hauser again talking with them, and Rampart very calmly says, "Peace has a price," But he's like, "Well, but nobody's fighting. What's going on here?" And then Crosshair makes this cool assumption or not assumption, but he figures out that the Bad Batch is here. He actually admits they're more dangerous than you realize. Tom, what are your thoughts on Crosshair in this episode?
I agree. I 100% agree with you. He's becoming super cool as an Imperial villain. I think I'll be honest with you, and this is just where I stand. And obviously things could change where I will change this idea, but I feel like he's beyond hope. Oh. In fact, I feel like Wrecker even feels that way. Wrecker in this episode, when and I'm not sure where we are in the timeline of the episode, but there's the moment where Omega sees Crosshair through the binoculars, and when they're looking down in the courtyard, and Hunter calls the meeting. He does the gesture with his hand, and the four of them get together, and Omega and Hera stay over, and Wrecker says, "We ought to just fly in and blow them up." And someone else said, and Echo says, "This is a military occupation. This isn't a separatist planet." Now, It doesn't necessarily answer the question about Crosshair, but that's kind of where I am. I'm kind of like, we're done trying to save Crosshair. And I think one by one, they're starting to fall as well. And I think Wrecker's there. But 100% agree with you. Crosshair is becoming a definite threat. There's a moment in this episode, and I wrote it down, but I'm not seeing it right now, where he looks up, and it might be from this episode or from this scene that we're talking about when they're observing him. He looks up, and I swear, he's got now that green tint throughout his helmet that kind of reminds me of poison, which is how I feel, kind of like he's been poisoned by the chip. Nice. And now he is like dangerous. But he looks up, and I'm telling you, it's almost like Pedro Pascal and doing acting with the Mandalorian helmet on. Oh. He looks up there, and I feel like he can see through everything. And he can see them without actually seeing them, which just scares the heck out of me. And he now has his own little musical sound. It's not like the Imperial March, but it's this electric low beat that when he looks up or makes eye, he gives a look, it's like a burn, yeah. And it's like, yeah, you want to just run. It's great. I think this episode really defined Crosshair very, very well.
I actually like your points way better than mine, and I'm glad that you brought up the fact that this isn't a separatist planet, and like they're starting to connect dots. Yeah, this whole separatist republic thing is over. It's all about the Empire or nothing, and people are, we all take it for granted because we know the history of Star Wars, but in the context of what's happening in the story, this is a new concept for people. Yes. So that the good guys who are, ostensibly the Republic, have gravitated towards a new name, but there's so much more to it than a new name. It's an outward, instead of being evil behind the scenes, they're very much affronting everyone and trying to do it with a smile. Whereas it's one thing I've always sort of liked about the Empire, not what they do or how they do it, but just as villains. But then in another aspect of this, the First Order, they're just mean and they don't even try to hide it. So the Empire uses charm and stuff like that. And it's a little bit crazy. Tom, you also brought up like when we see Crosshair, and you alluded to the music. The music, I think, in this episode is about as good as it gets. I wrote down a number of times. This music is so powerful. Blake, you want to talk about the music, or should we just jump into Hera and her plan?
I won't. Well, I'll talk about the music because I want to talk about Crosshair really quick too.
Yeah, please.
He has been actually my favorite Bad Batch member since I first saw them in Clone Wars. How could you not like the cool sniper guy? I always thought he was kind of a cool, sly, kind of mysterious character. And I really thought that the music and just the way they presented him in this episode, this was everything I wanted this character to be in this show. He's been there. I don't think he's been in the show enough. That's been one of my complaints about the show. We kind of are jumping all over the place. We don't seem to have main focus as far as certain plot points. Crosshair being one of them. It does seem like toward the end of this series now, that is going to be a focus is Crosshair. But like Tom said, just when he looks and you just hear that strange music, it feels like you're watching a horror film. And there's going to be this, the Jason lurking through the woods chasing you. That's what this character is supposed to be, and I love it. And I think by the end of this show, whether I like it better than Rebels or worse or wherever I rank it, I think Crosshair is going to come out. This is still probably one of my top 5 to 10 favorite villains, possibly, depending on how they execute the rest of his story.
That's cool, and maybe he'll show up with a hockey mask. That would not be. This is a fun one. It's also fun for me. When Hera and Omega reunite, or when Chopper shows up again, it's just so cool. Like, I love that they're peers. I love that they're both girls and they have a friendship, and they're both in positions of power, taking charge. And it's very clear when Hunter, who's this crack strategist, and he's a veteran of the Clone Wars, he says, Hera, let's hear your plan. And then we see this beautiful explanation. I'm sure for all of us, it echoed Rebels, right? Hera's usually always come up with a plan. Yep. So, of course, they all have their turns doing it. Ezra certainly is adept at it, as is Sabine. But seeing it like this and how they respond, and I love, Tom, there's like a brief moment where you're like, not sure where Hunter's going to go. And then he's like, it's a good plan. And then they just talk it out. And at one point, eventually, it's decided that the two children are going to go do their own thing. And it's so I guess he's not as worried about them keeping safe, but I don't think it's that. I think it's more that he just trusts them, and maybe he's trying to make up for his previous mistake. I don't know, Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't really thought about that, but I think even in the scene before that, there's a defining moment that may show that Hunter's gaining more trust in Omega because he does give the nay. He's like, no, there's too much cost, there's too much to this, and Omega says she's trying to save her family, Hunter, and then she says, I'd do the same for you. Mm-hmm. And he it hits inside, and then there's a bit with Hauser, but then it comes to Hera and Omega, and I think this one gave me the chills. Mm-hmm. Hera says to Omega, "Why do you trust him?" And she says, "Because he's my brother."
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute, because this whole season we've been talking about them as father and daughter. And that statement to me sees that or implies that Omega is starting to see them as peers and less as family structured. You know what I mean? Like a family of brothers rather than a father and uncle, like we've said throughout. So I'm like, okay, are we starting to see a change in family dynamics here with that? But I think all of that right there sets up the Hunter saying, okay, what's your plan? And I also think Hunter is starting to, I go clear back to Rafa here, when I don't remember the exact quote, but it's before she walks back onto her ship at the end. She says something about you're going to eventually choose a side. Mm-hmm. And I think we're starting to see that, because nothing in this episode, even though Hera offers money, he never addresses the money issue with her. He's making a decision based on what's the right thing to do, not what's going to keep us sustainable as a crew.
Right.
And we know through the history of Star Wars, Han Solo was always doing things for money, but then all of a sudden it became less about the money and more about the people he cared about. And
Right.
so
Less
that's
about
giving me
the
chills.
Benjamins and more about the Ben Solo.
That exactly. So anyway, that's so that's my thought on like why does he change? I think he changes his mind because he's starting to see that sometimes you do things because it's the right thing to do, not because it's what you're getting paid to do.
Right. And you can't worry about your safety. For one thing, you're very well trained, and there are people that need you. You know, we
Yeah.
can't stick our necks out. But I still maintain that he doesn't believe that. Of course, he's going to stick his neck out because he's a hero. He's a hero. So then they execute their plan, Hera, and we kind of passed over the part where Hauser goes to Cham's cell and tries to talk some sense into him from his own point of view, I guess. But Blake, anything you want to say about that conversation when he goes to talk to the Syndulas by himself?
Yeah, you know what? I thought that was a pretty interesting scene right there because you see two people or two groups of people that are in very dire circumstances. You have Hera's parents there. You understand why they feel the way they feel toward Hauser. Here he was someone who was supposed to protect them in that planet, and look where they've ended up. So you understand them. I guess you can say lashing out at him. Then but at the same time, I felt very bad for Hauser. This is someone who, like I said earlier in my comments about him, someone who's very conflicted, and he wants to do what's right deep down. And here he has the people who he does care about truly, telling him, you know, why'd you do this? How could you let this happen? So you felt bad for him, but you understood where they were coming from too. I thought that was a very good scene because it just showed the turmoil that was internally going on within both of them. If you really listen to the dialogue and watch the beautiful animation of their faces and whatnot.
Yeah. Good point. So let's, speaking of good points, we're going to take a quick break here. And when we return, we're just going to talk all about Chopper, and I'm going to scream and laugh and giggle. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
With travel beginning to open up and Walt Disney World and Disneyland reaching full capacity, this is the time to book your Disney World vacation with MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. Their signature service and expert advice will help clients maximize their vacation, time, and dollar. I use Becky Menken and MEI's incredible services all the time, both for family and for travel for the show, because of their no cost, no obligation quote when you use the service. Plus, they proactively adjust a booking if the rate goes down. Literally, I will wake up one morning and I will get an email from MEI saying that the price went down, and I will get a refund sent to my credit card right away. I don't have to do anything. They help your family enjoy everything Galaxy's Edge and the Disney theme parks and the cruise lines have to offer. Can help you plan every detail and always share invaluable tips. That's for Walt Disney World, Disneyland, the Disney Cruise Lines, or other cruise lines. It doesn't have to be Disney related. They literally can help you plan a vacation anywhere on the planet. Be sure to go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel and sign up for a free no obligation quote to any of the Disney theme parks on the planet or any vacation that you have in mind. You'll have the best vacation possible and help out me and Coffee with Kenobi in the process. We are back, and now we're knee deep into the plan, Tom. And
Yes,
part of the plan is just a whole lot of vintage Chopper goodness. Walk us through their plan, and just talk about the critical role that Chopper has in this. I mean, I used to joke that I was never going to get a Chopper tattoo, but sometimes I'm a little conflicted.
I love that. I think you should, Dan. I definitely think you should. And I'd be curious to know how you have his arms positioned. If it's like flexing his muscles,
Oh, it's got to be flexed.
shaking his fist.
I'll put it right on the bicep right there, you know.
There you go. I love it. Oh, definitely. We'll talk to your wife about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's thrilled.
So I think it's super, super early Hera planning, as you mentioned earlier before the break, that we create a diversion. Hera loves creating diversions to achieve a goal someplace else. How many times did she send Zeb and Ezra out to create a diversion so that Kanan could get in? or send Chopper out to make a dessert. She's a master at that. And here we get to see her early, one of her earliest plans, if not her very first major. In fact, I'm guessing this is probably her first major plan.
Yeah,
So
I think so.
the idea is to create a diversion at the refinery. And Chopper is crucial in this because he has to shut down the 5 gun turrets to allow Tech and Wrecker to fly in and start just blasting inside the refinery. In the meantime, Echo and Hunter are going to shimmy up the wall of the, I don't know what the Capitol building or whatever, and get in to rescue Cham, and Hera and Omega are to oversee the operations of the diversion. So that moment when you see all of those droids coming down the ramp of that shuttle, and you're like, oh my God. I mean, look at how polished they are. All these astromechs and other like slick designed. And then out of nowhere from under the ramp comes and you just have to love it. And then he like dives off so that they can get their inspections, and then he comes around and uses his little blast to push up over the crease and then he just goes along and drops down into the trench. And you know what, Chopper's got to learn that you just can't be out loud grouchy, because that's what got him discovered. He's over there in the terminal going, rah, 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 and the 2 clones come over and like, hey, you're not supposed to be here. Oh, Chopper, someday you just got to do your business.
And then he shot
was great.
them. Is there anything better than when they put their blasters on him and he puts his hands up? Like, how many droids do you see do that? And the fact that he just kind of skulks, like kind of sneaks in there like a little penguin at the end of a nature show. He's like the short runt that joins the others. He doesn't look anything like the rest of the astromechs. In fact, have we ever seen a unit like Chopper in the history of Star Wars? No. Like, how could he not stand out? But he stands out for all the good reasons. Blake, anything you want to say about Chopper before we move on?
Oh, what's not to love about him? He's absolutely great. I think aside from R2-D2, obviously, who's number one, I think for all of us, I mean, Chopper's got to be, he's top 3 droids.
He's my number one.
He is fantastic. I absolutely love that scene. I thought it was really genius where they put that scene toward the middle of the episode. So if you think about it, we've talked about some kind of heavy stuff so far.
Yeah.
Now here comes Chopper and the kids, and you have this moment of just hilarity. And it kind of softened things up a little bit before it got serious again. And I love the scene with Hera and Omega jumping in the ship when things weren't quite going as planned. And all I could think about was every news story I've ever heard of some 10-year-old kid who got his mom's car, drove down the street, hit a couple of mailboxes. The cops pulled him over like 3 blocks away. That was Hera's Star Wars moment in that. She didn't quite know how to handle that ship, and we saw that. But between them and then Wrecker and Tech showing up in the ship, we had a fun little action sequence right there.
It was cool to see Wrecker in the shooting a cannon from a starship overall. But I really like the music when Chopper flies into the shuttle. But Tom and Blake just talked to us and did a great job. Talked to us also about Hera's first experience as a pilot. In the previous episode, she'd never taken off or landed before, but now she's all in. And Tech has this great line. Do you remember the line? I wrote it down.
Oh, I've got it written down. I have a star next to it, and I was about to say, "Hey, Dan,
please
talk
about it.
Save that." So first up, but what I want to say before we get to that line is, so go back to last episode when Uncle Goaty, when he says to Hera, we get a little preview of this. He says, "Oh, Hera, taking off and landing are too, and so they don't let her do that, but she flies." So here we see why he didn't let Hera take off, because man, she took out that other shuttle right next to him. That was wonderful.
That's because it was new, though. Yeah.
even though this was her first time taking off, it was a little funny, even though there's still some peril there. But before I get to the line, when Tech and Wrecker fly in, and you alluded to this, Blake, and I just want to give it a little bit more, and that is Tech's flying there. I mean, he zips in and wings that thing around to put Wrecker into position to start causing some mayhem. And I just really appreciated that little technical piece of flying by Tech, because I really, as you know, he is still my favorite Bad Batch, even though we haven't really had any centric episodes around him. He's been crucial on every single one. But Hera says, as it's feeling like there's a little bit of relief that they've succeeded in this, Hera says to Echo, "We're getting the hang of this," and she says it on the radio. So Tech chimes in and says, "Yes, your dangerous and uncontrollable maneuvers are as confusing to them as it is to us."
Wasn't that fantastic?
I howled with laughter when he said that. He's such a precious guy. I love his matter of factness to everything.
I hope that character never changes, because he has just been gold one-liners this whole series. And I think that one was number one so far for me. I absolutely died laughing, just like the rest of you did during that moment.
Totally agree. And I also thought it was kind of cool, like the fact that she's dangerous and uncontrolled maneuvers. I think it was a nice sort of a foreshadowing of she's not going to start doing that on purpose. Like, it's just instinctual for her. She's that good. She confuses them. We haven't talked about this yet, but she's her plan is the first time we've ever seen Crosshair surprised. Yeah. Whenever he's about to ambush the Bad Batch or he's hunting them down, he can always say, "Wait a minute, this is what they're doing." He's right. But he couldn't predict Hera. And her dangerous, uncontrolled maneuvers are a great sign or harbinger of what she's going to be. And I thought that was super, super cool. And they did it they played it for laughs, but I really like that a lot. Hauser then has the moment for a lot of us. It was our number one moment of the episode. Blake, I'm gonna let you take this one, and feel free to weigh in, Tom, on this as well. But talk about Hauser trying to warn Cham, and then his speech to his brothers.
Yeah, so we have the rest of the Bad Batch are able to get Hera's parents, and Hauser knows that there's a trap waiting outside for them, outside that main escape door they were going to use. And here he is. He's again now confronting these people he swore he would protect. And this time he's able to convince them through his speech to them. I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was enough for them to know that he really does care and love that family, that planet, and his original cause. And so they're able to take a plan B route. And then the like you said, Dan, this next moment has been number one for, I think, almost everyone I've talked to who's seen this episode. There we have Hauser. He walked right out, and the clones are kind of shocked. They're like, "Whoa, this is supposed to be the Bad Batch and the prisoners," and even Crosshair is taken back a little bit. And he's able to give that speech of, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? This is the place we were supposed to protect, and look what's happened. And we see half of his garrison, not all of them, but half of them. You see, they agree, and you see that conflict finally come to an end with Hauser. And it really opens up a lot of questions, not to speculate, obviously, but you wonder where else in the galaxy is this exact same thing happening now with these clone troopers. This one scene has led to a lot of very interesting conversation among fans, I've noticed. And you just wonder, is this going to be the start of a clone versus Imperial uprising, possibly? Do I think season 1 of Bad Batch will tackle that? No, I think the storytelling's been a little safe. But if there's a season 2, I think they're possibly setting up something really great. And I thought it was just a wonderful moment. And I've heard elsewhere, people who are military who have seen this episode, and they're like, when I was overseas, these are feelings I felt. So it's hitting certain people, right in the heart, right in the feels with this moment. And I don't know about you guys, but there was a lot of tension too, because Crosshair is looming over them this whole time. gun ready, and I thought he was going to take him out at that moment once he started his speech.
I did
Did
too.
you guys think that either?
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely, I did.
Because he's been ruthless and heartless through the whole thing.
Yeah.
So that I love that, and it's cool. Thanks for sharing that about real people in the military. Because of course I had writer this Jennifer. She's in the Navy. She's a former officer in the Navy. I don't know if she's an officer, but she's formerly in the Navy. And so there's some real realism there. Hauser says he warns Cham, and Cham's like, "You got to come with us because you're not going to be safe." And he says, "I can't abandon my squad." Tom, what is the deal with this amazing character, and why isn't the chip affecting him? That's the $1 million question, isn't it?
I keep going back to he. The only thing I can think is the chip impacted the clones to eliminate the Jedi. The only thing I can think, and as I mentioned last when our discussion in the last episode, is there weren't any Jedi around when Order 66 was laid out. So he has nothing that set him off, is the only thing I can think.
Well, think about this, though. When they were getting all their chips removed, Wrecker, there were no Jedi there, and Wrecker tried to kill his friends.
Well, but oh, I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean? If you go against whatever the orders are, you're a traitor. They say that repeatedly. So
there does seem. Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt there.
No, please
go ahead.
But there does seem to be, with certain clothes, certain levels of hesitancy they can have toward these chips. I mean, if we think back to the final arc of Clone Wars, right when Order 66 was ordered, we saw Rex. I mean, he did turn on Ahsoka, but you did see that brief second where he's shaking, he's quivering. There's a minute a second he can just hold back just enough to give her that warning to get away. Yep. So they do have the ability to, so some of them more so than others we've seen, but have the ability to have more free will, I guess you could say. And you never know, maybe these chips that die-hard soldier Imperial mentality, maybe it wears off after a while for some people. We don't know. We don't have answers for that. But
I don't know.
That one moment, I love this conversation because this is what Star Wars is all about. This fun, nerdy speculation of what it's all about. I'm loving this right now.
Well, I have to say, the Hauser is a hero in my eyes, through and through. And I have to say, the tipping point was when he went to say and make the appeal to Cham in the prison, and he says, "I'm trying to help you. Can you tell me where Hera would be hiding?" And I have to say, I was still kind of on the balance of, can we trust him? Because he just was in the room with Rampart, and Crosshair was in there, and Crosshair turns, looks at him, and walks threatening past him. So I thought, is Hauser going to make a power play to get position and reestablish himself as, an Imperial clone, save his soul, whatever. And so I was like, oh my gosh, do we trust him? Do we not trust him? And Chan chooses not to trust him at that point. But then here he does in this instance. But my favorite line to his brothers is, and I may not have it word for word, but after his whole thing, what are we doing? We came to free Ryloth, all of that. He says, "I will not be a part of it any longer." Throws his weapon down. Man, that's where I thought Crosshair was going to have it. That's right. When he threw his weapon down, I thought Hauser's done. But, and so I guess part of the question is, why doesn't Crosshair take him down?
Exactly.
But I so badly wanted this, and I think maybe I wanted to do it more myself than I want to see the other. I wanted to salute him. I'm not military. I'm not trying to pretend to be military, but I felt that like raising of the flag moment when he said that. And it was like, this is the kind of person it takes to start a rebellion.
Yep. Super
Hauser
heroic.
And so, I keep my fingers crossed that we're not done with Hauser. I suspect we are, but this is how rebellions start. And he got half of them.
See, that's great. And I don't think we're done with Hauser by a long shot. I still maintain I wouldn't be surprised if he became a member of the Bad Batch. I don't know. I guess we'll find out about that. See, here's the thing, though. If there is a shadow of possibility that the inhibitor chip gives you a possibility for free will, even if at great cost or struggle, then Order 66 doesn't mean the same thing. At least it doesn't to me. Mm-hmm. Because that means you could resist it. I think part of the tragedy of Order 66 is that you don't have a choice, because Palpatine's goal is to take away your free will. He says that he wants you to have freedom and peace, but he really wants is you to have freedom from agency or having any kind of options at all. Because he wants to take all that away, which is what he does. So the idea of it expiring that you both mentioned, I think, is interesting. I love that there's a mystery here. I love that we don't know, and I hope that we see a little less of I have no choice. I'm a programmed robot to the Empire, and someone that I don't know. I just don't know, and I love that. I'm sure we're going out for a great explanation. I have a lot of faith in it. A lot of faith. Any last minute thoughts on that part?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we saw earlier on in the season something I desperately wish they would go back to is the story on Kamino. We all know that Tarkin is now, feeling both sides of what the Empire is going to do as far as their military goes. Are they going to continue this contract with the people on Kamino, or are they going to stick with this recruit thing? And I'm wondering I'm sure we'll get an answer to the whole chip thing and why they're doing what they're doing. But I think maybe this scene could be them setting up Tarkin being like, oh, this is how the clones are going to act? Well, if that's the case, we're going all recruits and goodbye Kamino, goodbye clones. I mean, that was set up earlier on in this story. We haven't touched it at all since the first half of the season. But you wonder if this is going to be laying the groundwork for something very tragic to be happening.
Little clone revolt.
I'm afraid you might be right. I guess we'll see. So a great speech. The only thing we didn't mention before we talk about them leaving is when Rampart and Crosshair and Hauser are talking. Crosshair says something about underestimating the Bad Batch, and then Rampart says, "I think I've underestimated you." And then Crosshair looks kind of uncomfortable, and when he walks by Rampart, I didn't take it as threatening. I can't take it as kind of like he's trying to figure out what the heck just happened. I need to prove myself, kind of a thing. But what did he mean that he underestimated Crosshair? I was a little thrown by that.
I wonder if it has something to do with he suspects he was part of that plot of that assassination in the previous episode. We saw, like I said early on, he's conflicted. He's also very suspicious of the scummy ways of how the Empire is doing things. So when I heard that, that's kind of what ran through my head. I may not be right, but
oh, you mean from Hauser's perspective?
Yeah, Hauser's perspective.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, don't be sorry. That makes sense to me. But what about from Crosshair's perspective?
Not sure.
I guess
he's a tough cookie to crack, isn't he?
Yeah.
I guess the way I read that I underestimated you is that Rampart didn't think that the Bad Batch was as formidable as they are, and knowing that Crosshair was part of the Bad Batch, and now he sees how formidable, he's kind of looking at Crosshair like, I've underestimated you. I haven't given you enough power, which foreshadows the end of the episode. Their last conversation.
I like that.
See, Tom just gave the right answer. Ignore what I said. That was perfect.
No,
very well said.
I actually like what you said, Blake, because it made me think about something different from Hauser. So no, I think that was great. Both great choices. See, this is why I get the best of the best on here, man, because I know they're going to teach me things and make us all think, which is wonderful. So at the end of this, they do it really quickly, but if you look as they're like as a far shot of the entire group of heroes, Hera high fives Wrecker, which I mean, come on, that's the best thing ever. I love that Wrecker high fives people. That's just the best. And then Hunter refuses payment, which I thought was a wonderful moment, Tom, of just Hunter clearly showing us that, earlier when I said, I'm not putting my neck out, I actually am a good dude. And of course I'm a good dude. And I just can't, he's got to pick a side. If you stand for nothing, you'll fall for everything. And Hunter is not falling for stuff. The fact that he doesn't take the money, I think is super cool. And I would have expected nothing less. So I don't know. It's just some cool. They're talking about having their own battles. So he says, "I've got my own battle, so I can't help." But I just can't imagine, Tom, how much longer Hunter is going to believe that.
I think he believes it, but his rhetoric doesn't follow yet. I think the only thing that needs to change in Hunter is for him to say it out loud, because he refuses the payment and he says, "I've got my own family to look after," which then the camera goes to Omega and the other Bad Batch, but Hera is also standing there. I don't know what to make of that exactly, other than Hera and Omega haven't parted ways. But he says, "I have my own family to look after," and it's Cham's line, I believe, that says a lot. He says, and it's again, Dan, you talk about all the time in the hero's journey that there's the call to action. How many times has Hunter heard the call to action? And here it is again, because Cham says, if a war is coming, you'll need it to protect them.
Right.
And then we learn that Tech has taught Hera another trick of flying. I love that Hera is learning from them. Hera learns from Omega that flying, there's a feeling to flying, or I'm sorry, it's the other way around. But in their conversation, Hera is learning from Omega that there's not only that there's a technical side, but then Hera shares that. Well, here Tech is teaching Hera, and I forget what it was, to how to cloak a ship or something like that.
Yeah. How to scramble their signal so it can't get picked up.
That's right. And so but Hunter refusing payment ties into my final thought, so I'll save any further comment on that.
Okay. Hera calls Omega her co-pilot, and then we get the scene that you guys talked about where Crosshair says, "Request permission to hunt them down." They don't actually say why. He doesn't order him to kill him. He doesn't order them to capture them. He just says, "I'm going to hunt him down." And it's like, permission granted. Blake, anything you want to say about those last few points, or do you want to give your final thoughts?
Oh, no, I'd like to expand on that last scene, because that was another very emotional moment for me. We've had many moments like that with Omega throughout the season so far. We have these little emotional moments with her through certain episodes, and the one with this one was saying goodbye to Hera. Here you have this young girl who's on this crazy wild journey. She didn't have a normal upbringing, and now she's made a friend, and she's already having to say goodbye to this friend. And you felt for her. You could see the sadness in her face. There's a little bit of hope. Maybe they'd see each other again. I think Hera said something of the sorts. But that really hit me. As far as the money goes from Hunter, I didn't think about that, actually. I'm happy you guys brought that up. I think the fact that he turned it down was very noble of him. He could have they refer to them as mercenaries now, basically. He could have very easily done the greedy thing and taken the payment and left. But we know that the money they owed Sid is paid off. They're basically free men, and he wanted to do the right thing for Hera and her family. But the one thing I wanted to ask you is, you both, actually, since you're both fathers with Omega, I said there's been a lot of little emotional moments like we had with the goodbye. Do moments like the one we had in this episode, with you guys having kids, I'm not a parent myself. How have those scenes as parents in this episode and throughout the series with Omega affected you guys from a parent's perspective?
I mean, for me, I love them, and they resonate and ring extremely true. Mason loves Omega. She's one of his favorite characters. And I just think there's an authenticity to it that, along with the Mandalorian and Grogu, but this one even more so, really, just feels like authentic compassion and love. And I just think it makes me I've always liked Hunter, but it makes me love Hunter.
Yeah. And well, Dan, we have been labeled psychologists of Star Wars, and so I think we're qualified to.
That's right.
Yes, we're qualified to answer this question. And Dan, I would say exactly that. It's authentic. It is fully authentic. There have been so many moments throughout this season that we have said, we have been in this position. But I will say, I feel like this episode takes a departure from that. And it comes in Omega is maturing. And she is, I don't know, she's beyond her years as a child.
Oh yeah.
And when she calls Hunter and the rest of the Bad Batch brothers, I felt like that she was putting herself more on a level of peers than a child. And so I'm not sure what I make of that yet. I want to see more before I make a definitive decision as to the father-daughter relationship has gone. I don't think it is. I just think it's in the context of Hera being around, to be honest with you. And as a father, I know my kids are different when they're around friends.
Yeah,
and so maybe that's the impact. I guess time will tell as the next few episodes come around. But I'm starting to see sort of a drift from that. And there was one other thing, and then outside as viewers, I think my daughter has stopped short of saying that Omega is one of her favorite characters in Star Wars. But I think if I pressed it and I literally came out and said rank Omega with Ahsoka and Rey and others, I think she would struggle to give me an answer on that, because I think Omega really resonates with my daughter who's 14. That's so cool, I look for it is super, super cool. And so I quite frankly, I think she also really likes Fennec Shand too.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
that's
I think
cool.
she relates to her as a bounty hunter. So I don't know. I can't wait to have a conversation with her as this all starts wrapping up, because I think Ahsoka's her favorite, hands down. But I think Omega in a different way becomes a different kind of a favorite for her.
That's cool.
I'm curious. I can't wait to see that, and I love that as a father.
Yeah. Oh, I did. That's great. Yeah, I like that too. All right. Well, you guys promised earlier.
Yep.
That you were going to talk about if you were going to modify your grade. I'm not going to change mine. I still think it's an A-. There's a lot of things I think are really cool about this episode. I've talked about a lot. I didn't gush about Chopper as much as I could, but I mean, there's just some fun, comedic moments there that you mentioned, Blake, which is kind of a nice way to kind of break up some of the intensity that was going on throughout. So, Blake, we'll start with you, since you're the one who first promised us a potential change or lowering or what have you. So what say you, good sir?
This is why I shouldn't make promises, because my score is exactly the same. It's still a B+.
Perfect.
But I will say I expected an A+ conversation, and that's exactly what we got tonight. I knew. There we go. You like that one? Yeah.
That's very nice.
That's right. That's right.
That's very nice.
I love this episode, even though it's a B+ for me. The conversation as diehard Star Wars fans. With the character moments and the small plot points, what were we able to expand off them? It was great. I absolutely loved it, and I love the way it ended with now Crosshair going to be chasing them, being that big bad guy in the shadows now. Hopefully that happens more often. So I like where this episode left off. I think it's going to be a wild ride here, the last couple episodes. But still a B+, but a solid episode. Absolutely loved it.
One of your favorites. What is it fair to say for the season?
For less than A grade, yes, this is a top 5 episode for me. Maybe even top 3.
Nice.
Good.
Nice.
Good. All right, Tom. Any last minute thoughts?
Cool. Yes. My final thought is this, and I'll talk about my grade a little bit because mine does change. My final thought is, like last episode, I said I felt like last episode was a transitionary episode of a transition from Clone Wars to Rebels. I think this episode, and it's interesting, and whether it's intentional or not, I don't know, but it's how my mind makes sense of it. It's interesting that after that transitionary period, we get an episode like this that makes me feel like Clone Force 99 and the Bad Batch, especially Hunter and Blake. You just mentioned that they were called mercenaries in this episode. I feel like this is the episode where Hunter as the leader of the Bad Batch or Clone Force 99, is making the transition from mercenaries and we're doing our thing because not because it's right or because it's wrong. We're doing it because we're getting paid for it. And he's making that transition to, and I'm going to stop short of saying becoming part of a rebellion, but that's the direction he's headed. It's a more altruistic viewpoint from him. And as I said, in not taking the money, he's made it in his heart. His mouth, his words are not saying it yet, but he's on. That's the next step. And I think we're going to see that they're going to play an important role in some level of being a real thorn in the Empire side. With all of that said, I think what I was expecting from this episode, and I said the title, I was disappointed. I gave it not disappointed. A B is still a good grade. But when I look at the title of Rescue on Ryloth, I was expecting action from second one till the last second of the episode. And that's not what this episode was all about. In our conversation today and my second viewing of it and taking a more analytical look at this, I think where I was disappointed in the lack of action was more an episode of intensity, which sort of left me feeling flat in the first viewing. Second viewing, this, as Blake, you mentioned, A+ conversation, changed my mind that this episode is, like last episode, a solid A episode.
Oh, wow.
Cool. I'm glad to hear that. I'm very glad to hear that. I don't really have much else to add. I loved it. I thought it was very cool. It was one of the more fun episodes, seeing the evolution of Hera as a future leader. And I like Hunter so much, and I think he's good enough of a character. And I think the groundwork, the foundation is there for him to really evolve into something extra special. So I hope that we see kind of an end of the conflict of, I don't know if I want to get involved, because he keeps getting involved. I mean, and who are we kidding? And I'm surprised they're not calling him on it. I guess what I'm trying to say is he would make a great glacier because he's moving so slowly. And I want him to get to that next level. And I know that's part of the drama and tension. And
Yep.
I think the storytellers here are doing a fantastic job.
Indeed.
Agreed.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is...
As we near the end of the show today, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to have a cup of coffee with me and for helping to spread the word about our Star Wars family we've got here at Coffee with Kenobi. Be sure to tune in Monday nights at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live at www.coffeewithkenobi.com/live or www.facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi and have a cup of coffee, tea, or any beverage of your choosing with me as we continue the conversation. To join us in the CWK Cafe, which is our Facebook group, and share your Star Wars thoughts, comments, reviews, and opinions in a family-friendly, spoiler-free place that is also drama-free, go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/community and be part of the conversation, talk about this week's show, or just talk about some Star Wars. We have a lot of fun, and you'll make some new friends as well as catch up with longtime friends along the way. I also want to thank all of the new and longtime members of the CWK Alliance and let you know how much I appreciate your help and encouragement. If you want to join the CWK Alliance, go to www.cwkalliance.com and sign up today. Not only will you help out Coffee with Kenobi, but you also get access to CWK Pour-Over, the exclusive weekly podcast not heard anywhere else. It's a great way to support and help out the show, and 10% of your monthly contributions go directly to the St. Jude Children's Hospital to support the incredibly important work they are doing to help these brave children and their families. Plus, contributors at the CWK All-Star level can watch a video podcast of CWK Pour-Over hosted by me, Tom Gross, and Corey Clubb. Feel free to reach out anytime if you have any questions. In addition to being part of the community on Facebook, please don't forget to visit our website at www.coffeewithkenobi.com for Star Wars news, announcements, reviews, videos, and so much more. If you have a question for me or just want to share your thoughts on the air, feel free to email me at danz@coffeewithkenobi.com and I'll share them on the show. You can also connect with me on Twitter at Mr. Zare, MRZEHR, or on Instagram at DanZareCWK. There are also a lot more ways to connect with me and Coffee with Kenobi on social media. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Give us a like on Facebook at facebook.com/Coffee with Kenobi. Check us out on Pinterest or subscribe to our Coffee with Kenobi YouTube channel. On our YouTube channel, you can find Facebook Live video, different interviews throughout the years, highlights of video coverage throughout the Coffee with Kenobi history, and the audio podcast itself. You can order my book, The Star Wars Book, which I co-wrote with Lucasfilm's Pablo Hidalgo and Cole Horton, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Books A Million, Walmart, or anywhere books are sold. You can also find my writing on Coffee with Kenobi's website, as well as StarWars.com, where I am an official blogger there, and on IGN, where I contribute occasionally to articles about Star Wars, as well as other popular culture topics. If you are considering starting a podcast or a blog, let me know how I can help you get started and make your creative vision a reality. Be sure to check out danzmedia.com and we can get the process started. I am also available to come to your school, conference, business, or organization to talk about how to tap into your strengths and help you bring out your very best. I want to inspire you to be inspired so you can take that first step into a larger world. Thanks as always to our Coffee with Kenobi sponsors, especially MEI and Mouse Fan Travel, our travel partner and your one-stop shop for all things Walt Disney World, Disneyland, the Disney Cruise Lines, or anywhere on the planet you want to go on your vacation. Please go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel to book your magical vacation and help support Coffee with Kenobi in the process. If you like the show, please tweet out that you're listening, share it on Facebook, or invite your friends and family to tune in and share a cup of coffee with us. And if the Force is especially with you, please take a couple of minutes to rate and review the show on iTunes or Google Podcasts. Every review makes a huge difference and helps to spread the word, and I can't thank you enough for your help, for your support, and your friendship. I love so much being a part of this wonderful Star Wars community, and I can't thank you enough for all that you do for me and Coffee with Kenobi. All right, well, speaking of fantastic jobs, it was fantastic having both of you on, of course, talking about Star Wars The Bad Batch. Blake, we're going to start with you. Where can people reach out to you if they want to continue the conversation and pick your brains about Star Wars, or just say hello?
Facebook's the best place for me. The only reason I have a Facebook is to talk to you guys and talk Star Wars with my fellow Star Wars fans. And that's not a lie. That's the only reason I have Facebook, is to talk Star Wars. And I'm very active on the Coffee with the Community, Coffee with Kenobi pages. We have a lot of fun on there. We have the best community in Star Wars. That's not an exaggeration. I really do. So if anyone wants to reach out to me and talk Star Wars, Facebook's the best place to do it.
Yeah, Blake is a regular in the CWK Cafe, our Facebook group, and one of my absolute rocks for Facebook Live. So I really appreciate you, man. Good to see you. It was great to hang out with you face to face a couple of weeks ago, you and the missus. That was so fun.
Yep, come on back down here to Florida and bring Tom with you next time you do it.
All right. It's a date. It's a date. Tom, where can everybody reach out to you and find your work?
Oh, yes. Well, you can, on social media, the best place to find me there is, let's see, on Twitter at Draftline. That's a good place. And, I don't really ever talk about Facebook, but I check in on the CWK Facebook page every now and then. And so you can find me there from time to time. I did post for Patreon fans just recently. I posted one of my top 5 summer snacks that we enjoyed this week, so you can see that. But then you can also find my thoughts and writings on Star Wars and many, many other topics on my blog, Seeking Positivity in the Galaxy.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here.